See, I'm trying to figure out if I don't know if you saw, like when I sent you the email asking you to come on, I had mentioned Greg Rosicki, and he also studies gut microbiome, and he's currently doing a case study with one particular ultra runner. I can't remember his name at the moment. So I'm trying to figure out if it's just because my little world seems to revolve around endurance athletes, or if there's something particularly interesting about what's going on in the gut of ultra runners.
Um, I mean, I think ultra running in particular is interesting for this just because there is such this nutritional load component. You have
Hmm.
to eat, and just because of the prevalence of GI issues. And
Yeah,
that's why I
yeah.
think the microbiome is interesting with for ultra runners. And also, like frankly, like I need to find a little bit of a niche to be able to study that I
Okay.
won't get, sort of swooped in by bigger labs with better resources and more time to do something. So it's a little bit nichey, and
Okay.
Greg is a similar way. Greg and I reached out to Greg about like trying to collaborate
Hmm.
on the project, and eventually through him found the person that I'm collaborating with at University of Kentucky.
Okay.
So yeah, a PhD student, Taylor Valentino, who's an ultra runner himself. So it's a perfect fit, and he's been a great guy to work with so far. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, it's such a small world. I was like, I was like, if you don't know Greg, I was like, you've probably heard of Greg. And I can just can't imagine that there's that many people like in that kind of intersection of
No,
study.
no, there's not. But I don't know if you have heard about this massive study that came out in Nature Medicine, which is one of the best, like most high impact journals. I won't say best, but has the highest impact of any
Hmm.
journals. But it looked at uh, Boston Marathon runners' gut microbiome.
Hmm.
And have you heard about this study?
Well, I saw it in your Twitter feed, but I was actually gonna let you kind of digest it for me a little bit more than me trying to digest it just myself.
Yeah. So what is fascinating is they found that there's a specific species or strain of bacteria that was higher prevalent in the faster runners, and it was related to lactate metabolism.
Hmm.
Uh, and what they did is they actually then took that strain and put it in mice, and they found that those mice had improved performance. So they
Hmm.
not only found that there was a strain like just associated and correlated, and we know that correlation is not causation
Right.
um, with like increased performance, but then they actually went one step further and inoculated these mice with that strain of bacteria and showed that just by doing that they could improve the mice's performance
Yeah.
on the treadmill. Now, whether that relates to human performance, is still not completely known. But the fact that they can just change one bacterial strain in a mouse microbiome and then have it improve in endurance performance is pretty remarkable.
Hmm.
And you can bet that there's products being made or developed that are looking at that specific strain as
Oh
far as
yeah.
a probiotic or prebiotic, and seeing if you can do the same in humans. So
Yeah, and that's what kind of I talked a little bit to Greg about this. I was just like, since I'm an entrepreneur, and I love that you're like a lot of your research and interest is in like practical studies. Like, what can we do that people can literally take and try to apply? Just because that's my interest as an entrepreneur. Like, what product can I create? What solution can I provide that helps people have a better life, whether that's better performance or just happier or whatever it is. Like, it's sometimes I think we run into with science, it's like almost these esoteric studies that sometimes something will come of them, and other times they just kind of float into the ether and then, don't really get used for anything. So,
yeah,
like, it's my personal bend. I probably really should have been an engineer because I'm so like problem solution focused. But no, that's really cool. And yeah, I'm sure if we don't see it, that study was just recently published, wasn't it?
yeah, like 3 or 4 weeks ago, I think. Yeah, I
Yeah,
can.
so I'd say if we don't see something in the next year using that, I'd be surprised. especially for people that are already in that space, that already know, how to produce that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I
I'm
think they'd
pretty
come up with something
I'm
quick.
pretty sure. I mean, this was a study published by researchers at Harvard, and they've probably already spun out a company or have a company that is sort of licensed to use this and probably have intellectual property on the specific stuff already, is my guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that
So,
makes sense.
yeah.
Um, I kind of wanted to ask a little bit about. I read on your not very updated blog a little bit about you've had issues with cartilage damage and kind of like personal trials with running and marathoning. Can you tell me a little bit about, I guess, what happened with the cartilage damage
Yeah.
and kind of how that's all developed?
So the first thing I always have to preface it with is it wasn't because of running that I hurt my knee.
Right,
It
right.
was because of running, but it wasn't because of like overuse injury. It was
Hmm.
actually traumatic injury. So I was running and I slipped and I basically my knee just went straight into like a big old granite rock.
Hmm.
And at the time, I was maybe trying to ignore it more than I should have.
Hmm.
And over time, over the course of a year, I developed sort of a knee pain. Um, Tried also physical therapy to try to get rid of that pain, and eventually had an MRI, and it showed that there was a cartilage like defect, which basically means that cartilage was actually completely gone, and so there was a spot where my knee flexes over the patella here, and it hits
Hmm.
the tibia, where it just basically is bone on bone.
Okay.
Um, and so that was causing the pain and the inflammation. So as I would run, that that motion would hit that bone and like inflame it, and probably cause more and more cartilage damage. So I was looking into what sort of things can be done for cartilage damage, and there's not a lot. Cartilage does not really grow back.
Yeah.
So there's a few different surgery options, and eventually I settled on the option of what is called a microfracture, and it's not the most up-to-date surgery, but it's one that has been used for a number of years with pretty much the same success as any of these other options,
Hmm.
but it allows these other options to sort of stay on the table. And so what they do with the microfracture is they went into my knee, into the femur, and they basically poked holes in the bone.
Yeah.
Uh, and then the bone marrow effuses out, and in that bone marrow are cells that can make cartilage, and those cells hopefully stick, make cartilage, and sort of plug that hole. The caveat is that cartilage is far inferior to the cartilage that we're born with. It's a different type
Hmm.
of cartilage that was more likely to break down. So I did that, started running again, was up to like 20 or 30 miles a week, even ran in Club Nationals last December.
Hmm.
But I was still having knee pain. In the spring, I still had knee pain after running. I was doing the workouts with the guys, and eventually I got a second MRI, and they showed that the lesion was actually bigger than it was before. So more damage had occurred, and I may not have actually had much recovery from the initial thing. So I'm at this stage now where I'm in this sort of weird spot where they're like, well, we could do another surgery if you have painful symptoms, like if
Hmm.
you relieve the symptoms, or you can just modify your lifestyle to not induce the symptoms if possible.
Which is a polite polite way to put it.
Yeah, which is a polite way to say don't run.
Yeah.
And even if even if they did the surgery, they would recommend not running because these all these surgeries have very limited efficacy long term. They're
Yeah.
none of them are really that great for long term. Sort of, there's no reversal of the damage.
Hmm.
So long term, I'm probably now looking at getting a knee replaced eventually.
Hmm.
And until then, trying to mitigate any of the symptoms and such as I can. Uh, I'm on the list for a particular type of surgery in which they take a cadaver knee and they actually take a little bit of the bone and then the cartilage and they just sort of fit it in to your bone and cartilage to match. And hopefully that will then prevent the damage. But I probably won't get that surgery at least for a couple of years as it stands
Yeah.
right now. The recovery is really terrible. It's 6 weeks of non-weight bearing, so
Okay.
that's a pretty significant hurdle. Even to a college professor who has summers off, it's not typically what I want to be doing for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And you
So
spent you I think I saw you'd spent time in a passive motion machine after the surgery.
yeah, so I was definitely researching different ways to improve the outcome of the surgery. And one of
Hmm.
the things that they found, at least in animal models, is that passive range of motion, which is basically this machine that sort of takes your knee, it goes from here and then flexes it up and then back and forth.
Yeah,
I
real
was 6 or 8 hours a day,
yeah.
just sitting on the couch with that machine. And that was one thing that was supposed to improve um, like your outcome from the surgery.
Hmm.
So that was one thing that I was trying to do. Another thing I was trying to do was eat more gelatin, sort
Hmm.
of soft tissue, and sort of tendon and ligament health, which is work that Keith Barr at UC Davis has done, which is some really interesting stuff and very unique that not a lot of people are studying, but how you can actually improve and repair tendons and ligaments and sort of non-muscle tissue, which cartilage is one as well.
Hmm.
I didn't. There's no evidence that it works for cartilage, but there was no harm in eating like
Right,
this.
it's one
This,
of those like it's not gonna hurt, but maybe it'll help.
but maybe, yeah. And then the last thing that I was trying to do, and something that as I read more and more on, is getting in the sauna. So even
Hmm.
passively heating like the leg, as I wasn't able to put any weight on it, so it's going
Hmm.
to atrophy naturally. But it does seem that heat can attenuate some of the atrophy. And I think I just tweeted about a paper yesterday um, that is showing this a similar thing that if you just heat up the muscle, you can sort of block the breakdown of muscle mass and maybe the loss of mitochondria you would typically get. So I'm a firm believer that sauna is an important thing for recovery from a surgery like that, but also just in general, it's something that I do prescribe some of my athletes as well, not just for the sort of heat acclimatization stuff, but just in general, I think it can be useful. Yeah.
Yeah. It does is a like the method of heating matter? Like say you're like spending time in a hot tub. Is that going to be the same effect as being in a sauna, or is there something particular about, I guess I'll say, heated air versus heated water?
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be because even this last study used a different sort of technique to heat just the local muscle.
Mm,
And so one leg was non-heated control leg and one leg was heated.
mm,
Uh, and so that didn't seem to matter, but I think you get more systemic benefits if you're in sort of heated air or heated water, say up to your neck.
mm.
And you basically have to feel uncomfortable. That's the
Yeah.
rule of thumb for actually getting any benefits is you can't just go in there and get that warm, like a nice warm feeling, but you
Like, oh,
actually
it's slightly toasty, feel good.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It's at that point where you start to get uncomfortable. You stay in another 3 or 4 minutes, and then you're probably getting some sort of benefit. And
Okay.
that's the same for heat acclimatization. Like you need to make sure that you're actually feeling uncomfortable in order to be getting the sort of benefits from heat acclimatization.
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, so
Yeah,
are you at the point now where you're basically off? You're just not running?
yeah. I'm running, once a week
Okay.
for 5 miles, and I get pretty sore afterwards, which is really funny. And I'm trying to do more biking and just stay
Yeah.
active the ways. Yeah, and just focus more on my coaching, and try to live vicariously through all those other athletes that I coach. But
Yeah.
it's a good opportunity to take a step back from my own running, and it is really fun to help athletes sort of reach their potential. The puzzle for each athlete's different, and it takes time and effort to do it well. So I think that not running gives me um, more time and time to be able to sort of focus on the coaching part, which is, it's a reasonable transition, and I may get back to running at some point, but
Hmm.
not for the immediate future. Yeah,
Yeah. So I mean, you're feeling good, and you're not like having any mental breakdowns or.
I think it's so. Let's see. This happened. I mean, over 4 years ago when I first
Hmm.
hurt my knee, and it's not easy to come to grips with the fact that you might not be able to run.
Yeah.
When I did it at a time when I had was having probably the most success I'd ever had as a runner, and so to table that and have to move away from the sport at that specific time is, yeah, it's really hard.
Hmm.
It's really, really, really hard, and it's probably why I kept going back and like trying to run, and then developing, the same pain and sort of banging your head against the wall over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, it has taken a lot of time to sort of mentally say, all right, I'm going to be retired from the more competitive aspect of running and
Yeah.
sport. Um, so mentally, I'd say I'm much better than I was, a year or two ago. But
Hmm.
it's still, you still get a little bit of FOMO when you see people that you were running,
Yeah.
going out there doing great things and having fun and seeing great places on their feet, and knowing that you might not get back there for a while. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, was there anything you did to kind of cope with that, or is it just a matter of like time heals all wounds?
I think it's, you definitely have to change the perspective. So, changing my perspective from as a runner to as a coach has been important,
Hmm.
to see that as, you know, to see that as more of an identity than the runner and athlete part of me.
Hmm.
And, it's not like I have now a bunch of free time. I've been busy. I
Yeah.
have I have this career and path that I'm on, and it can consume all of the time if I want it to.
Hmm.
So it's not like I have this gap in time that I'm trying to fill.
Hmm.
Um, but I also think in one of the recommendations, or my wife had this idea, which I thought was quite brilliant, and we haven't fully done it yet, but we were basically going to have a retirement party so that you could have
Okay.
a little bit of closure and like, bring out a few of the old like medals or things and just say like, all right, we're retiring, and
Yeah.
sort of it. So at least mentally, I've been thinking of myself as retired from that aspect, and I
Okay.
think that helps. Yeah,
Yeah.
not just injured and coming back anymore. I'm just retired, and that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. It gives you this kind of the space to have an identity shift, like you were talking about moving
Yes.
from runner
Yeah.
to coach.
Yeah. And that's a really hard thing because, we definitely identify as runners. Like if
Yeah.
you're doing it for, 20 plus years,
Yep.
then it's a hard thing to shift from. And, despite all of the talk about meditation, mindfulness, and letting go of the ego. One of the reasons why we run is often for ego, to sort of
Hmm.
express our competitiveness, and to see what we're capable of. You know, the I, what I am capable of, and
Yeah. I'm
I,
still good enough to do this, or I'm still whatever it is we have in our mind's eye about who we are and what we can do, and yeah, our capabilities.
yeah. And so we talk about that not necessarily being a good thing, but we all have those outlets, that
Hmm.
those sort of ego outlets that we need, and for runners, yeah, the running is important for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Matt, I'm going to ask you the question I ask everybody for this year. This is my like ending question. I like to ask everybody if you can only choose one food for recovery for the rest of your life, what do you choose? You can't choose gelatin, by the way.
Okay, I won't choose. Yeah, I wouldn't choose it anyways. One food for recovery. I gotta go chocolate milk. I've always been
Okay.
Insane. Yeah, I'm sure I'm probably not the first person to say that,
No,
but
the first person to say that was actually one of the guys that put together the chocolate milk study. So,
oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, I think chocolate milk has a nice balance of sort of the carbs and protein that you need, and plus it's pretty delicious. So I definitely would down some chocolate milk after my super long runs. It was always in my repertoire. Yeah.
yeah, good deal. Matt, if people want to see what you're up to, follow you, see kind of what's going on, where can they find you?
Yeah, on Twitter I'm MJ Laye. That's Laye. So it's just my first initial, middle initial, last name. And that's where I try to share like whatever research I'm finding interesting. And then if you're interested in the coaching side of things, you can find me on Charmin Ultra. So just Google Charmin Ultra and Matt, and you can see sort of my bio as well as the other coaches that we work with on Charmin Ultra, who are a great crew to work with. And yeah, those are the two best ways to get a hold of me and interact. Yep.
Sounds good. Thanks for coming on today, Matt.
Yeah. Thanks, Jesse.